I just want to begin with the news that we've heard about some pages that have exploded and we've seen a number of casualties of Hezbollah fighters. I mean, things are really ratcheting up in the region. I just wanted to get a sense of your reaction to all of that and what's been going on.
It's currently a bit too early to have an opinion on what happened. Information hasn't filtered back. It certainly looks unusual for so many devices to have a fault at the same time, in the same fault, but it is not a positive sign of where the conflict's going.
And let's talk about the conflict, because your foreign minister, the Saudi foreign minister, has described the situation in Gaza as a humanitarian catastrophe and, frankly, a failure of the international security system. You know, 10, 11 months into this conflict, where do you think this is heading?
I'd like to say I was optimistic, but it's difficult to see where that optimism would come from. I am hopeful that there are opportunities that will present themselves because for the first time, certainly in my life, the majority of the international community is coming together with the right ideas in mind of how to solve this, where to go. And, you know, if we look back at Oslo and agreements before that, we generally know where we want to end up. But the situation on the ground is getting worse and worse and worse, and I think we're moving further and further away from where we need to be. This is the closest that I think we've been to a regional war since 1973.
It really feels like things are on the brink at the moment?
You know, I'm thrilled that we haven't got there thus far. Many were predicting that this would spread 3, 4, 5 months ago. The fact that it hasn't is a positive sign, but every day we get closer to that. And I think it's definitely time we put renewed efforts. First of all, to stop the fighting. And for us, we've been very clear, a ceasefire is an immediate demand. But we need more and more of the international community to push a bit harder before we can get there.
Who do you blame for the failures that we're seeing in terms of at least a ceasefire?
I think apportioning blame now is dangerous. We can get to that later. The crucial thing is to stop the human suffering on the ground. People are dying every day, and every person that dies is obviously a tragedy, but it makes the possibility for peace get further and further away. And focusing on the how, the why, the where, first of all, that goes back, in some cases, thousands of years. Right now, the ceasefire is our priority.
I spoke to the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, last week, and I asked him about the pressure that he can put on, namely the Israelis, Prime Minister Netanyahu. And he said there is only so much pressure that we can put. At the end of the day, it has to be down to these leaders themselves making certain decisions to prevent the bloodshed. Do you agree with that?
There's always more pressure that can be applied. If you believe that this is the best we can do, that's probably the most pessimistic option out there. I think we need to be more inventive. We need to look at new ways, but you can always apply more pressure. There is no absolute wall in the amount of pressure we can apply. I think the international community as a whole, as you rightly quoted my foreign minister saying, has failed slightly, otherwise we wouldn't be where we are.
Where does that leave normalization with Saudi Arabia, with the kingdom?
We've always said there is no normalization without a credible solution to the Palestinian problem. And the solution to the Palestinian problem is a Palestinian state. If we don't have an irreversible path towards that, we can't even begin the discussion on normalization. We have made the effort, and unfortunately, this government in Israel is taking every possible step to move away from that.
Are you also